very warm welcome to the East 3 Route Investment Seminar 2013. Now, this is the third edition of an initiative that was started back in 2011. I'm Samantha Loring, and I'll be facilitating today's debate. Now, the debate today is going to be focusing on government support for tourism, trade, and investment opportunities, and the need to have government really on board to enable and be a catalyst for private sector-driven investments and, of course, community-based support. Now, the role of the East 3 Route Initiative is really to focus on tourism opportunities across the three regions and related economic activities as they present. And of course, when we're talking about these three regions, we're talking about KwaZulu-Natal here in South Africa, we're talking about Swaziland, and we're talking about Mozambique. But this year, we're also adding a fourth country, and we're going to be looking at the opportunities that including Seychelles within this route will present for tourism operators and of course the broader economies. So with that being said, let me introduce you to our esteemed panel of ministers and government representatives. I'll start off with the MEC, Michael Mabuyakhulu. He, of course, is the MEC for Economic Development and Tourism in KwaZulu-Natal. Welcome to you, of course, sitting in the middle there. And sitting next to me, I've got Sibusiso Mkhonta. He is the Permanent Secretary for the Ministry of Tourism and Environmental Affairs of Swaziland. And right at the end there, I'll throw to Hiune Abacar. He is the Director General for the Mozambique Tourism Authority, Inatur in Mozambique, of course. Welcome to you. And the lovely lady joining us on stage, Sherin Naiken, Chief Executive for Seychelles Tourism Board. Welcome to you all. It's great to have you with us. Minister or MEC, I will throw questions to you to start off with, because this is an initiative, as I said, that was started back in 2011, and certainly one that you've been focused on driving because you realize the need for cooperation outside of South Africa and outside of KwaZulu-Natal, and the opportunities that certainly Mozambique, collaborating with Swaziland, presents to KwaZulu-Natal. How successful has the past 3 years been in your assessment?
Well, first and foremost, we must say we are very grateful to the respective countries, and particularly to the Honourable Ministers of Swaziland, Minister Mduduzi Dlamini, as well as Honourable Minister of Mozambique, Honourable Cavaro Maria, as well as the Honourable Minister of the Seychelles, Minister Alan Santaj, who all of them have actually come on board and have been part of this initiative. When we began in 2011, we're driven by one thing, that way back in 1998, our heads of state, particularly of the neighboring countries, led by President Nelson Mandela then, together with His Excellency, former President of Mozambique, Joaquim Chissano, as well as His Majesty the King of Swaziland, Mswati, the third tier in Swaziland, they actually signed an agreement which was, amongst other things, saying we want to cooperate to build the economies of our respective countries, and at the core of that, we want to use tourism as one of the sectors that we can actually grow the economy so that we can be able to redress the imbalances that exist in these countries, the issues and the challenges of poverty, the challenge of unemployment, and the challenge of inequalities. And what we did then when we met in May 2011 at Indaba, we met as the three ministers of these countries. We sat down and we put a proposition as KwaZulu-Natal that we want to see us beginning to take a step forward in the implementation of this agreement. And I think we did find a very warm, reciprocal recipient of the idea by the respective ministers and the countries. And we worked together with our teams, both in government, but also in the industry. And I want to actually applaud the industry for coming on board in the manner in which they did. But of course, our tourism agencies in all of these respective countries did us proud by putting together the necessary work, working together with government departments. And since then, we can safely say that we have seen growth in tourism numbers in these respective countries in this route. When we were in Mozambique on Friday, His Excellency, Minister Cavalo Maria, was able to present some of the facts and figures. And among those, he indicated that we have seen an exponential growth in Mozambique in particular after the launch of the route, of the numbers, inbound tourism numbers, from a mere 1.2 million to about 2 million numbers that by 2012. And that actually indicates growth. We have seen a huge investment by private sector companies who are actually building hotels, or building lodges amongst this route, and that actually tells us that we are succeeding. We have taken this route into the international platforms. We have been to the WTM, the World Travel Market in London, where we jointly have launched this route in 2011. And I was there with Minister Mduduzi Dlamini when we launched it with the then Minister Makford Sibanze then, and we launched it in London. We also went again with Minister Mduduzi Dlamini afterwards in 2000 to launch this in 2010, 2011, to launch it in London and WTM, ITB. So from where we stand, we are very thrilled that this idea is actually gaining momentum, and indeed we're actually having many people asking questions about the Easter route. The fact that Minister Alan Santaj was able to see us launching the Easter route in WTM and understood what the elements of it were, was able to kindle within him the need for him to see Seychelles joining us. So he then made an application which was duly considered and accepted by all of the respective members in February of this year.
Let me go to Permanent Secretary Mkhonta, because you'll be able to give some perspective as to the opportunities that being a part of the East 3 route has presented to growing tourism offerings, tourism products, and what you're doing right now to focus on attracting more foreign direct investment and even African investment. We're talking about the importance of that today along this route to grow tourism offerings here.
Thank you, Samantha. Firstly, one may make this important observation that the strength of this East 3 route is that it does take the concerned stakeholders to the various countries. We were in Mozambique a few days ago, and indeed the Honorable Minister there participated in this very initiative. Honorable Mabuyakhulu was also there, and we were delighted that Seychelles also came on board. I think as we travel around these countries, it's clear to us that with the media in support and the stakeholders in support, we are beginning to see information being spread about the 3 East route and the potential it has. In fact, in the 3 countries, naturally we are neighbors, and we happen to be on the eastern side. Even though Seychelles may look a little bit far, but they are very near. And indeed, I think with more cooperation and more political will, I think we can take this forward. I may also want to reflect on the discussions that took place here this morning. It does appear that people are very clear about what is happening, and indeed even the questions that were coming up and the suggestions that were being brought up are building this initiative and beefing it up. And if we were going to continue with our communication strategy, that of organizing more seminars, I think we would take this very far. We may also want to reflect on one thing, that governments by their nature have the responsibility of creating enabling environments. And I think in our 3 countries, that is happening. And on the ground, of course, we're also talking about community initiatives. You do see that the ministries of finance have started providing seed capital for various projects, and those will also cover the areas of tourism. In Swaziland, for instance, we had a fund which was initially called a 45 million fund. It eventually got the name FinCorp. We also have a regional development fund. The youth are not left out. There is also something. I think they can draw some seed capital, if you like, from some of these funding mechanisms that are available to develop tourism and indeed to strengthen the economies.
Yeah. Director General, let's talk about the Mozambique perspective, and in a context where we've been speaking about today the growth rates from your country, where we've seen 8% above China even now, and certainly above Swaziland, South Africa and Seychelles. So when we're talking about Mozambique, of course it's been about the mineral sector, it's been about mining. From a tourism perspective, to what extent are you seeing growth rates increasing? Are you benefiting also from an initiative like this, the East 3 route, and how will this initiative strategically help you reach your tourism goals?
Thank you very much, Samantha. If you allow me, I will take the opportunity to the facilities provided to us speaking Portuguese.
Please go ahead.
Eu penso que, de facto, nós beneficiamos desta iniciativa. Não só beneficiamos institucionalmente, mas também ao nível do setor privado, ao nível das comunidades. Institucionalmente, nós fortalecemos as relações entre as instituições
for all the things that we need to cover. Swaziland is now working with you, and also the Seychelles. And we, as Mozambicans, are opportunists, so we're going to use these routes also in the Indian Ocean, the island of the Seychelles, which will give us an opportunity for expansion of the route. In the private sector, as we are already doing, we have taken the initiative to the establishments. Belém, Maputo City, people already know there's an initiative like this, which is regional, which includes SADC states, and they continue to show their products to the region, as we had in Samandla, when we were speaking about the spaces that are available by the Mozambique investor, which was also why we had the Center for Formation in Belém, saying which were the challenges that the human resources had in that area. And also this exposure for the private sector is complemented by the places we visited recently. There are Mozambicans who already show their products out to all the people in the region. And we also heard that we have an embassy here. Consulates which are not only for the SADC countries, but we've got the German embassy, the Norwegian embassy, and that signifies that we are using this mechanism which has been created for the development and to develop our potential. And before this session, we had 2 sessions here. We also had people from the banks, people from the private sector telling us the challenges and the perspectives that they have for the future. We also heard a lot, and we also were pleased to note that Mozambique is growing 8% compared to the 3 in the 10-year period. And we believe that we will continue with such development and progress. Also, perhaps to state that the growth, it's not what the gentleman said earlier, but this development and progress, we had it even before the exploration of gas. And our country is not only operational with gas, we've also got agriculture, we've got industry, we've got tourism, because we are conscious that that is what is making all the people to have mass employment in the country. We are conscious that the country had to progress socially and economically. Thank you.
So, Ms. Naiken, we want to get the Seychelles perspective because, of course, we know that Seychelles is seen as a premier tourist destination, but I'm sure that specific positioning from a global mindset took a lot of hard work, and it didn't start out as that. So tell us about what the government has done, the government of Seychelles, in order to position Seychelles as a premier tourist destination, and of course offer some insights for the other three countries in terms of what we can learn from the Seychelles experience.
Okay, Samantha, thank you for the question. I would say for tourism, for a country, you can tell a lot how much importance tourism is for a country in terms of who holds the portfolio and how much money in relative to other sectors is allocated to the sector. And I would say since 1972, with the opening of the international airport, this is where tourism started to take off in Seychelles. And it has then grown to be our main sector, and is still today our main sector of the economy. Yes, Seychelles is seen as a premier destinations. The destinations like attracting the royals and the celebrities. It's true. But I would say we as a destinations, we have a lot more to offer. A lot more to offer, especially now that we know with the crisis and everything that's happened, there are challenges. I'm pretty sure Seychelles is not the only destinations that have had to face those challenges. My colleagues' countries as well have had the same challenge. And therefore, this is why, in terms of our strategy, we've had to diversify a bit, to look at emerging markets, and to also start marketing other of our products. For example, explaining that Seychelles, we have also products within reach for normal, everyday people who would like to experience it. For this reason, I think I would come to closer to why Seychelles decided to join the East Free Route initiative. Of course, our minister, he didn't miss 1 minute to say, we're on board, we're coming on board. If you're ready to accept us, we want to join. It's because for us to benefit, there's no ambiguity about it. In terms of marketing, it always makes more sense. You market yourself as a region, you stand to benefit rather than doing it individually. When we are marketing the East Free Route initiative, Seychelles stands to benefit directly. But what we're also doing is assisting the region as well in getting the necessary visibility, because at the end of the day, we, as Africans, even if we are not mainland Africa, we need to support each other. We don't expect people coming from other continents to come and support us. So this is why, for us, it was very important to join the initiatives and assist where we can. Where our strength is, this is where we will contribute. And of course, we stand to benefit also where our weaknesses are. Like we're small, we have a problem of resources. Manpower would be one, because our population is quite small, and this is areas we know the other countries within the initiative can complement us as well.
So there we go. We've touched on all aspects across the 4 countries right now, and a very strong element coming through is the marketing of it. But what we do need in terms of developing tourism offerings along the supply chain is the infrastructure that connects the countries. So MEC, if you could talk about some of the infrastructure development projects that are being planned right now to connect the 4 areas here, as because of course Seychelles is now being added. Yes, there is sea in between, but of course that is something that we need to look at. But in terms of road infrastructure specifically, we're talking about from South Africa all the way to Mozambique. What is being put in place to address that area, which creates massive bottlenecks?
Well, I think, Samantha, it is important for us to say that our starting point is that tourism, for us to grow tourism, we have to understand that all of us have a role to play. From the side of government, there are things that must be done by us to enable, facilitate, and play a role of being a catalyst for tourism. but also to directly intervene in areas where it's appropriate for government to intervene, such as investing in infrastructure and the likes. But the second part is the private sector. As we put in that investment in terms of public spending and through the public fiscus, you also require a complementary approach on the side of the private sector in terms of the tourism trade, both in the area of investment in the new facilities, so that you can, as you are increasing the inflow of people to come into your destination, if your marketing strategy is working very well, you then also at the same time are able to say to people, we will give you decent facilities because we are competing with other destinations in the world. And I think we are very clear. People are looking for new experiences, and they've been to other destinations that are highly popular globally. And as we are chasing that dollar of the tourist, it is important that all of us must be focusing on that. But the other element, which is the third one, is that it is the communities. We expect communities to play a role, both in the level of understanding that tourism is community-based, but also that they become beneficiaries. And for them to do so, there are certain specific roles of being ambassadors, of welcoming tourists, but also creating an environment that everyone would simply say, if you go to that destination, I can bet you, you will have a wonderful experience of your life. Now, on the side of government.
If you don't mind, getting back to the actual infrastructure, the
Yes.
infrastructure that connects
Yes.
the countries, what is being done in terms of improving it?
We are doing a few things. The first one, those who were part of the road, the first excursion, where we go from KwaZulu-Natal, we went through Ponta de Ora into Mozambique. There is a road there that actually links KwaZulu-Natal and Mozambique, Maputo, up to Maputo. We now know that on our Mozambican side, they are working on that road, and therefore that we are hoping that by 2017, that infrastructure of that road would have been improved. That is the first thing. The second part is that we're also identifying other areas within the region and within our countries where we think there is still a need for us to improve infrastructure. But what we're looking for there, we're also looking for a number of strategic approaches with this. We're looking for PPPs, private-public sector partnerships, for people to come in and to simply say, we can build, operate, and transfer this particular piece of road because it can become a catalyst to open up the tourism investments in this particular country. But in between South Africa, for instance, and Swaziland, the infrastructure in terms of the N2 is fantastic, and we're maintaining that infrastructure. So we think that there are areas where we still have to identify those, and we have now agreed at our principals meeting that all of those projects will now constitute what we call the investment map for the Eastern route. And because we would then want to go and simply say, these are the ones we want to put out for concession in terms of infrastructure, these are the ones we as governments we can do on our own, depending on the availability of resources in each country, and these are the others where we think we might actually inspire private sector to come in. We're not actually only focusing on the road, on the roadside, infrastructure road, we're also focusing on energy, because we think it is important that we must actually have sufficient energy, so that those who want to invest, they can find energy. We're also focusing as well on water, because we think water is important in this regard, not only for investment and for the economy, but also for communities. So in our approach, therefore, we're driven by this. But what is exciting as well, Samantha, which is important, is that unlike other continents, when it comes to communication, we think that we are growing faster as the region in being able to be highly connected, so that people who come into a destination can be able to use your modern ICT technology. So we think we are actually happy at that level, because all our countries are improving with regard to that.
Well, it's great to know that you're starting an investment roadmap and actually highlighting the areas that need private sector to also come on board. As you say, PPPs is what you're looking at. I'd like to talk about starting up a business, whether it be in the tourism sector, whether it be in any other related activity. And Permanent Secretary, just looking at the Swaziland perspective, I mean, of course, a lot smaller country, but it takes a lot longer to start a business here in Swaziland relative to, for example, Mozambique and South Africa, with being around 56 days according to the Ease of Doing Business report, and there are a lot more procedures. So from a Swaziland perspective, I mean, give us an idea in terms of the initiatives that are being put in place in order to make it easier for people to start a business here, to be able to invest capital in this country.
Thank you, Samantha. With regards to the question you have posed, and indeed I may want to be direct, what the government of Swaziland has done in the first instance is to establish some structures, including SIPA, the ones that put together the video clip which we saw this morning. And what is happening, indeed what the plan is that we should be able to make it easier for investors to do business and indeed to start whatever initiatives they have. There may be teething problems in some of the structures, but I think we're slowly getting there. And I have already indicated that in addition to the structure that I've just referred to, the government of Swaziland is doing all it can to ensure that the small and medium that's SMEs in general have got a home, and we do have a structure in Swaziland that is trying to facilitate that, and they are bringing together small, medium enterprises, people together. But there is still room for improvement. And indeed, as we proceed with this East 3 route, I think there will be more to come.
From a Mozambique perspective, Director General, one of the comments that has come through today is it's quite costly for business to look at moving into Mozambique in terms of the cost of transport and actually dealing with border posts, because just if I have to use an example, we were speaking to the Rhodes Food Group, is a South African company who's now moved to Swaziland and set up operations here. They're looking at the Mozambique market, but it's quite costly for them to move into that market. So what is being done in order to facilitate investment across the East 3 route, and of course it will be including Seychelles, but reducing that red tape specifically at border posts, which impedes travel and impedes tourism and it impedes economic investments?
Okay, thank you for that, Samantha. Again in Portuguese, sorry. Actually, for me it's a pleasure. Nós fizemos conjunto de
We have joined up and done a few things. We have started with the signing of the agreement of the 3 route, and even before this initiative was that we made it that Mozambique could be more accessible coming through KwaZulu-Natal, and that is where we have the Goba border. Before, we had the Lomahasho border. How did we get to KwaZulu-Natal before? We used to go through the whole of Swaziland. But now with Goba, it's not necessary for you to go via Swaziland. You basically cut through. One of the things that we also did with South Africa is that the construction of what we call one-stop frontier. And that is being implemented, and we are conscious that we still have certain things that we still have to do with regard to customs of the two countries, but also we have noted and we were involved in what was happening with the decisions in the level of SADC for free circulation of goods and people. We also are conscious that it is important for us to facilitate the movement of the goods and people as well. There we also had to do some additions to follow the regulation that is in place, even perhaps saying that the advice of the minister
one
simple procedure to be able to invest in Mozambique. It means that we are going to jump phenomenally at the next evaluation. This is going to facilitate the initial investment in Mozambique. Also, we also took into account that it would be important to facilitate the businesses, not only at the legal level, but also with regard to the institutions and infrastructure. Who does business? It's people. That is why in the morning we said one of the things to facilitate this business is to have a partnership with people in the country itself. And Mozambique is pleased to say that, and this morning we also said in our investment law this morning that our laws are very advanced and it gives a lot of benefits to Mozambicans, but the benefits are the same to the locals and expatriates of whoever invests in our country. Anybody who invests, who want to invest must join with Mozambicans and do business with them, not necessarily just as a facilitator, but also if you can have, it's important that you have Mozambicans involved not only just to facilitate, but also to assist the growing of the business. We mustn't have illusion that we would leave. It is important that some people commence the business and start with this business venture. We don't doubt that things have to be done, but there are certain aspects that are being taken.